The album Burned by Deep Purple is celebrating 50 years, and this was a very pivotal album in the band's career because this was the first album released after the first split of the Mark II lineup and the beginning of the Mark III lineup. At this point in the story, two important members left the band, and they brought in two new members. One of them was from another band, and the other one was a then unknown singer who would later become one of the most popular hard rock and metal vocalists of all time. I will reveal all that in this video, as well as talk about the songs and how they were influential on hard rock, blues rock, and heavy metal. The story begins in 1973. Deep Purple released the album Who Do We Think We Are? At this point in time, Deep Purple was one of the top-selling artists after three successful albums, which include Machine Head, Made in Japan, and the aforementioned album. The band was touring non-stop and they needed a break, but management kept pushing them to tour, so they started to get burnt out. This led to some tensions with the band, and the tensions ran deep. Okay, that was a pretty bad dad joke, but let me continue. But these tensions caused their vocalist Ian Gillan to leave the band. Afterwards, Roger Glover left the band. I'm not sure of the reasons why, but from what I researched, it was because they were not getting along with Ritchie Blackmore, who would leave the band a few years later and start Rainbow, but that's another story. So the band is down two members. They needed to find some replacements. The first person they found was Glenn Hughes. He was from a band called Trapeze, which was another band that was playing hard rock in the early 70s. The band had their eye on Glenn because they knew that Roger Glover was getting ready to leave the band, so they started to check out some of the live shows of this band, Trapeze. They almost had Glenn Hughes play bass and vocals and continue as a four-piece, but they wanted to find someone else. One person that was considered was Paul Rodgers of Free, but he declined the offer because he just started the band Bad Company. They held some auditions, and they find this singer who was not known at the time. His name was David Coverdale. We all know him because he became to be one of the biggest blues and rock metal vocalists of all time with his band Whitesnake that would form years later. This brings us to the album Burn, the 8th studio album that was released on February 15th, 1974, and is celebrating 50 years. They recorded the album in Montreux, Switzerland, and on this album they started to change their sound towards a more boogie rock sound. They also incorporated some soul and funk. The album did very well. It peaked at number 3 on the UK Albums Chart and 9 on the Billboard 200. Let's talk about the album now. There are 8 tracks, 4 on each side. The album is about 41 minutes long, and the official lineup at this point was Ritchie Blackmore on guitar, David Coverdale on vocals, Glenn Hughes on bass and vocals, and John Lord on keyboard, and Ian Pace on drums. The album was produced by the band and mixed and mastered by Martin Birch. The album opens with Burn, the title track. This was also one of the singles. This was the first song recorded with the new lineup. This is considered to be one of the best opening tracks out of all of the band's entire discography, next to Highway Star from Machine Head. The song has a heavy guitar riff that was very influential in the metal scene. The guitar solo by Ritchie Blackmore was one of his best. This was also a fast-paced song that could have been influential for speed metal. The song is probably the only metal song on the album, but it's a great song. Years later, Ian Gillan refuses to play it live, but David Coverdale has performed it with Whitesnake and has done a re-recording of it, and Ritchie Blackmore has played it live with Rainbow. The song also has Glenn Hughes on vocals, who also re-recorded it on one of his solo albums. For me, personally, it is one of my favorite Deep Purple songs of all time. Might Just Take Your Life is next, and this one had more of that classic Deep Purple sound with the organ riff in the intro. The organ riff was played by John Lord, and Ritchie Blackmore played his guitar in harmony with it. I like this song. It has a very classic sound. It reminded me of the band Cream and The chorus was very memorable. The song also has Glenn Hughes and David Coverdale on vocals. And the highlight of the song is the organ solo that comes in towards the end of it. Lay Down, Stay Down is the third song, and this one has a very energetic feel. It has Glenn and David on vocals. I thought this one also had a cool boogie rock sound. I would say the song has some of the best drumming on the album by Ian Pace. The guitar solo by Ritchie Blackmore is a classic, and overall, just a very good song. Sail Away is probably my second favorite song on the album. The opening guitar riff has a really cool groove and one of the best Ritchie Blackmore riffs on the album. The song has more of a funk and blues type of sound. I think this is one of the best vocal performances by David Coverdale, who also does the vocals on this one as opposed to the other songs with Glenn and Dave. He really shows off his range on the track. This one also has some cool playing by John Lord, who played the Mini Moog synthesizer. It's just another great track. You Fool No One is the fifth track, and first from side 2 of the album. This one is very upbeat and funky sound. The song has both Glenn and Dave on vocals and has some pretty fast-paced drumming. Ritchie Blackmore stands out on this track with an extended solo in the middle of the song where he just takes off and he shreds. And as a bonus, there's another solo towards the end of the song. It's just another good one, and I really like that song. What's Going On Here is the second song on side 2. This one has co-lead vocals by David and Glenn. The song is not too bad. It has a very funky and bluesy vibe. John Lord plays the keyboards, but more of a boogie rock piano type of sound. And Ritchie Blackmore has another extended solo in the middle of the song, which was more of a blues rock sound. I did some research on the song, and some people said it was about a fire that took place in a bar, and this person gets trapped inside, and then there's another person who interpreted it, saying that it was just about a guy who gets drunk and hooks up with an old flame at a bar and can't get away from her. I actually think the second description sounded better in my opinion, but I don't know, this is just what I read. Now we have another big song called Mistreated. Probably the most popular song after the title track. It's almost 8 minutes long. It's a blues song. The song's about a guy who was mistreated in a relationship. The song has been played live often and has been covered by some of the bands that Blackmore, Hughes, and Coverdale have been involved in. The song was also covered by Yngwie Malmsteen on his 1996 album called Inspiration. I found it interesting that the song was almost on the previous album, Who Do We Think We Are? The song stayed in the band's set list until Blackmore left in 1975, and a live version was included on the Made in Europe album in 1976, and other live versions can be found on Live in London in 1982, Live in Paris in 1975, and the video Live in California in 1974. This is where I've been taking a lot of these little clips from. There's one more song, it's called 8200. It's an instrumental, very psychedelic and trippy, kind of like the type of music you would hear in like this 70s science fiction song. I really like it. It's very like over the top and kind of dramatic. I read some of the Deep Purple forums, and some people said it was a filler track. Other people thought it was one of the best album closers. The solo by Ritchie Blackmore really shreds on this one. I thought it was a cool song. It's just very different. I saw another comment compare it to Stevie Wonder's Superstition. I didn't really hear that one. But anyway, I really liked it. So that is all. I've not ranked the Deep Purple albums yet in full, but I would put this somewhere in the top 5 along with albums like Machine Head and Rock, Perfect Strangers. This album, it's different. It has more of a blues and funk sound in general, with the exception of the title track, which is more metal, but this one has a really good sound. I like this album a lot, and even though it's different, it's just a solid album, just great start to finish. So if you want to hear my thoughts on the previous album, Who Do We Think We Are, I will put that right here. On that album, I also rank the Mark II album, so kind of an interesting video there. And please like this video, helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I will see you in the next one.